My last video about i3 was just some basic stuff, and in this video I will show you how you can put in gaps in i3, and gaps is now built in into i3. You don't need to install any additional package. So this is pretty much where I ended off the last time. So under my stuff I will just add gaps, and these two lines are all you need to add gaps. So if I save my config and reload, if I open two windows now, you can see that there is a gap. The outer gap is this one on the borders of the screen, and the inner gap is the one between windows, and this is pretty much fixed. And in your config file you can put this to any number you want. For instance, if I put it to 15, you can see the gap is much larger. But if you go to documentation page, you can see that there are a lot more options. For instance, instead of inner and outer, you can put horizontal gaps, vertical, top left, bottom right. There is really a lot of possibility. I especially like these options. For instance, you can set the gaps for a specific workspace. For instance, if I open browser always on the same workspace, I can put no gaps on that workspace. And the way you would do it is just to tell which workspace, and in this case it will be 5, and I will put 0 pixels for inner and 0 pixels for outer. For some reason, for this to work, I had to restart my virtual machine. So now if I go to workspace 5, it's just the way it is set up, and if I go to 1, it has gaps. But what I like to do is just to add shortcuts for real-time resizing of the gaps if I really want to. To do that, I just add these lines. So what will this do? I bind these two keys I, O, and P just so everything is one place. So how does this work? So modifier I will increase size between windows. So if I go here and press modifier I, you can see all the gaps freezing. And if I press modifier shift and I, all the gaps are shrinking. If I press modifier O, you will see that outer gaps are increasing. And if I press modifier Shift O, the outer gaps are shrinking. So let's say for some reason I wanted these gaps in some time, and now I just want to return them as they were. In my config file, I made a shortcut to set the gaps just the way they are here. So if I press modifier P, they'll be just the size that I put in there. And if I press modifier Shift P, there will be no gaps anymore. I killed PyCom because that was causing me problems, and I noticed with the last update something happened. I hope they will fix it that by the time they release. So again, now if I don't want to have any gaps, I just press modifier Shift and P, and you can see there is no gaps, and modifier P is the same as it was. And you can look for additional info on their documentation page. I will link it down in the description. You have a lot of additional options. For instance, this is a nice option to run a program with no gaps. You even have an example configuration, but I use only this, and I think this is enough to put some fluff in your i3 window manager. This was part 2 of my i3 window manager series. And that's all.